Committee will come to order. We convene this morning to hear testimony on the state of the American Maritime Industry. We're delighted to have 5 witnesses who reflect the breadth of this industry. Mr. Matthew Woodruff, President of the American Maritime Partnership. Mr. Thomas Allegretti, President of the American Waterways Operators. Mr. Matthew Paxton, President of the Shipbuilders Council of America. Mr. Austin Golding, President of Golding Barge Line, based in Vicksburg, Mississippi, with 225 employees in 11 states. And I note that Mr. Golding is joined by his family today, and the mayor of Vicksburg, the Honorable George Flaggs, is with us too, for support for the maritime cause. And Ms. Barrett Erickson, Workforce Development Director for the Sailors Union of the Pacific. We are grateful that all of you are able to be with us today, and we look forward to your testimony. The economic and national security of our country depends on a healthy maritime industry. Indeed, our country's independence can be tied to the success of private colonial ships and merchant seamen that were authorized by General Washington to prevent British ships from delivering arms and ammunition. Today, maritime freight transportation supports about $4.6 trillion in annual economic activity, and the maritime industry supports 650,000 U.S. jobs. According to the Transportation Institute, 22,500 jobs in Washington State and 13,400 jobs in Mississippi are dependent on various elements of the American maritime industry. Over 1.3 billion metric tons of waterborne merchandise is imported to and exported from the United States each year, and almost that much cargo is carried on the 25,000 miles of inland waterways. Equally important to the economic benefits, a strong domestic maritime industry is essential to national security. DoD relies heavily on U.S.-flagged commercial vessels and civilian mariners to meet its sea lift requirements. The U.S. Coast Guard and the Maritime Administration are critical components to all of our defense and maritime functions, and the committee will be working to reauthorize these agencies. Federal law supports a strong domestic maritime industry, notably the Merchant Marine Act of 1920, better known as the Jones Act, requires that vessels transporting goods between 2 U.S. points be American-built, owned, crewed, and flagged. Today, over 41,000 Jones Act qualified vessels operate in the domestic trades. Properly enforcing the Jones Act is important for economic and national security. I recently sent a letter to the President, along with several colleagues on this committee, to express support for the Jones Act and to encourage the administration to convene a meeting of all stakeholders to discuss how the domestic maritime industry can meet new demands and serve new markets. The American shipbuilding industrial base is capable of building the vessels necessary to carry the nation's abundant energy resources, such as LNG and other fossil fuels, anywhere in the world. Becoming more internationally competitive is important to secure the industry's future. Currently, there are only 81 U.S. flagged ships operating exclusively in international trade, carrying less than 2% of the nation's annual foreign trade. This is troubling from a national security perspective because sufficient U.S. flagged ships and mariners must be available to meet national defense requirements. As to workforce, MARAD estimates a shortfall of 1,800 qualified mariners needed to sustain a prolonged military sea lift mobilization. As a member of the Board of Visitors for the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, I would note that Jack Buono was recently named superintendent there and is working to recruit and train mariners to fill this shortfall. We wish the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy and other training academies well. In that regard, let me express my support for the Trump administration's new initiative to help active duty military and veterans transition to maritime careers. The initiative will build on the successful military to Mariner program managed by the Coast Guard and MARAD. During today's hearing, I hope witnesses will address issues such as the laws and regulations affecting the operation and competitiveness of industry, the current and future impact of the Vessel Incidental Discharge Act, legislation that many of us sponsored last Congress. It was included in the 2018 Coast Guard Reauthorization Bill. Like so many issues, getting VITA signed into law would not have been possible without the coordination of the committee's ranking member, Senator Cantwell, and I also salute the efforts of Senator Sullivan in this regard. Also, members might want to comment on strategies to grow the maritime workforce and improve education and training programs. America is a maritime nation. We have a distinguished history of using our abundant maritime resources to expand commerce and protect our country. A strong merchant marine, shipbuilding, and maritime industrial base are the marks of a great power. I look forward to working with my colleagues to ensure America's maritime industry has a vibrant future. And I now turn to my friend, the ranking member, Senator Cantwell, from another great coastal state of Washington, for her comments.